Hey everyone, welcome into our Preps on 11 web special. Tyler Cass, joined by Scorebook Live's Nate Olson as we head in to week 2 of the high school football season, and we're really starting to kind of suss out, who's who this year.
There's, everybody now has started their season because, you've got 4 weeks to play 3 games. So some teams like Harding Academy, they started last week, and that was a 37-7 loss to Marion. We're going to talk about them in a minute, Marion, but that was a little surprising. And no indictment on them, but you just expect so much from that program. But you also forget, too, that they probably got a 2A or 3A enrollment. They're playing a 6A school there. They're a 5A classification school because of the qualifier. But so teams like that are now, everybody's playing now. So that's good to see that. And then next week will probably be like the thinner schedule then, because some people are going to end up in their non-conference this week. But some real exciting games last week and some really good ones this week.
He mentioned Marion on the road this week, taking on Conway, and this is a Wampus Cat team that, and big statement last week, I think, not just beating Bentonville, but beating up on Bentonville.
Yeah. I don't know if you've noticed, shameless plug, we have now added a feature where we pick every game, and when I say we, me, all over the state, every class. So there was one particular guy that's a little bit miffed at me because I picked Conway by 14 in this game, projected margin of victory. So I thought that was pretty generous, considering that's more of a compliment to Conway than it is an indictment on Marion. See, I mean, that's the way I look at that because of what I think they earned that after beating Bentonville like that. And also, you got to remember, this is a home game too. I mean, if this is at Marion for some reason, then maybe that's different. But if you want to prove me wrong, go ahead. I mean, if they go up there and beat Conway, I will for sure eat the crow. You can bake it any way you want it. But I think, Conway is really, really good. I think they're even better than we thought they were going to be. And, with Grayson Wilson coming over, and you thought maybe there'd be a little transition period. I thought it might come against Bentonville. I thought there might be a couple picks in there. I think he did throw one, but, his stats were amazing. And, he was out of the game, I think, in the third quarter. So he really passed that test. You have a scrimmage game, and then you have, a non-conference game. Again, at Jonesboro, both of those games were good. He's learning the terminology, his personnel. He's got some playmakers now. He's got a running back and receiver that are playing good, and he's gelling. And that's important for them as you go into the conference season. So he should be hitting on all cylinders. And Marion, very athletic team. One of the things I'll be interested to see is Carius Kern. I saw some tape of him against Valley View. He's a big offensive lineman going to LSU. Haven't seen that kind of athleticism and ferocity since maybe Sean Andrews. Marion Harris a couple years ago with Robinson, big guy, he's playing at Arkansas. But Marion was a little bit timid sometimes. Man, Kern, I don't know if he always plays like this. I would be very curious to see this. But there was like 20 plays of him, and it's like, the good players can kind of hit you after the whistle and get away with it. It's not really, they don't consider it after, they kind of consider it a continuation, right, so to speak. And he carries that block. And I think if you're a coach and you've got a guy that's that big and strong, you'll take a penalty there maybe and then kind of reel him in. But so many of those guys, if they're bigger than their opponent, they'll hit the block and they'll kind of slack off, He went right through it. I mean, there was 20 of those plays. So I'm going to be very curious to see how he does against that Conway defensive line. And one thing that I thought a weakness was of Conway when I was at the team camp in Bryant, their front seven to me was not real physical. So Pine Bluff was able to run on them effectively. Things change in 3 or 4 weeks of training, but that's something I'm kind of want to look at is how Kern helps his running backs and quarterback in that running game and passing game.
All right, on now to another interconference matchup. You got North Little Rock program that really the last couple of years struggling to find its footing after such a run of domination. Yeah. They take the trip to Benton.
Well, let me just say this. I feel sorry for the coaching staff and the kids that are at North Little Rock because a lot of kids have left. And so, they have their reasons for doing that. And that's fine. But it is unfortunate because Clint Reed is a great guy. He's got a good staff around him, and there's some quality kids there that stuck around. But it's going to be tough sledding for them, I'm afraid. And we saw that against Rogers. And this is a team that just a few years ago, 5 straight state championship appearances, and because of some of the things that have happened, I think with the coaches, a lot of coaching turnover, I think that has led to guys leaving. But I wish they'd give Reed a chance because I think he's a good coach and a good guy, and hopefully he can get these classes that are coming up to stick around, because North Little Rock is a proud program. They've had a lot of success, and Brad Boulding had quite a bit, and then a couple other coaches came in and that went on that 5-year run. So they're down, unfortunately, and Benton is on the way up. And so I think this game will be very much controlled by Benton. After the Salt Bowl, they had a good showing. 7 turnovers, though, that sticks in your craw. You've got a week to correct all those things. Drew Davis throws 4 picks in one game. He threw 3 of all of last year. So him being the competitor he is, that he's gone back to the drawing board a little bit, looked at that tape, and we kind of felt like in the press box he was rushing some things and maybe not getting out of bounds, making a bad decision, when he's rolling out. That stuff's easily corrected, and that stuff he did very well last year. That's also just a testament to Bryant's defense. I mean, they're very good. So I look for them to bounce back. Benton is the one team I feel like that could give Greenwood a run if you see a state championship, Marion too, possibly. So Brad Harris and company, they're just trying to go, week by week to get this team, where they win that conference like they always do with, the Salt Bowl. You lick your wounds a little bit. There's a little less wounds to lick now because they were up in the 3rd quarter. And then get into the playoffs and see if you can make that deep run.
All right, now on to a game that I think pretty intriguing, trying to figure out kind of who both these teams are. Lakeside taking the trip to Robinson. Obviously for Lakeside, kind of a revitalizing year last year. They've carried that over into the start this season. Robinson, almost the opposite. A year last year they want to forget, and they're trying to move on this season. What do you see in this one?
Yeah, how about Garen Rockwell? Yeah. Let's give that guy some props. I mean, didn't know who he was. He's an assistant coach at Lakeside, and I think many people didn't know him. And I've said this a couple times. I remember watching your preview of them and this guy being super excited about the program, and I'm kind of like, what does he know that we don't know? But he knew a lot. He knew that he had a good quarterback, some good weapons. And man, they went to the quarterfinals and they beat Lake Hamilton, which was huge. They hadn't beaten them in a while. I think that series had been suspended and then revitalized, but they hadn't had a lot of success against them.
Last year, first win since 1996. I just looked it up. So it's
96. Yeah, and then they beat them again this year. Yeah. And so fast forward to this year, you think, okay, well, they had a great year last year. Now can they do it again? Well, yes, they can. They have. They've done a good job. And, they've had to fill in some pieces. But I think that he was so enthusiastic, and that year, I think going to the quarterfinals, I think infused some enthusiasm in that program to where the guys that are 7th, 8th, and 9th grade, you're getting full participation. All those guys that can play football are out. They see what's, their coach there, what he can do. And, I've got a guy named like Wally Walcott. I think it's one of the better names in high school football. The quarterback, he's done well. Grady Oman, the running back. So they take care of Lake Hamilton, then they beat Sheridan. Now, this is a really good game. I mean, we've had some good games where they're inside the class, and they're kind of like, I told the Carlisle coach or AD, like, this Carlisle and Junction City is like Michigan and Texas. It's like the heavyweights within your class playing non-conference games when you really don't have to do that. Right. You could play somebody you think you could beat. But a lot of coaches are taking this philosophy of, we want to simulate a playoff atmosphere so that we can get our team ready for that when it does happen in November. You go to Robinson, I think that's an underrated stadium and fan base. So they're going to be a little hostile, and Coach Escola is going to have those guys ready. And you talk about North Little Rock transfers. Ty Broaden is over there, for quarterback, and there's some other guys. So there's some good talent. This is going to be a good game. I think it's going to go down to the end, and it's 2 good coaches with quality teams, and they're both, kind of on that cusp. I think we've all got Parkview penciled in for the championship game, and we're looking for that team that's going to be on the other side of the bracket that's going to beat them there. Well, both of these teams in Benton would qualify for that.
All right. Speaking of Parkview, the game that I think was going to be our game of the week. Everyone knew it. Everyone could have predicted this from the moment that it was on the schedule. A rematch of one of the best games of last season. It's Parkview, it's Bryant, it's at War Memorial Stadium. I mean, you could go all different directions with the storylines in this. You know, Parkview broke Bryant's streak last year. Who's got the longest streak now? It's Parkview. Two teams that, you know, want to win a state championship, two of the best teams in the state, regardless of classification. I mean, this is going to be huge.
Absolutely. When the dust settles, we're probably going to say this was the biggest game of the season, because just from the fact that both these teams could be ranked #1 in the state when you do the all-class, you know, overall rankings like we do and some other outlets do. And coaches are going to downplay that, but I think the kids are all about this. And I think Parkview, they've been #1, they want to stay #1. And in their minds, I think they realize that if they win this game, they're going to be favorites probably all the way through till the end. Now, you have to play the games. You can't be overconfident. But I'm confident in the fact that they will not be overconfident in those games because of the coaching staff. You know, that cockiness and things doesn't seem to be part of that culture over there. I mean, they take everybody seriously. They respect them. I mean, last year with Shiloh Christian, they'd beaten them the year before. I mean, they took them seriously. I mean, and that's why I think they're winning, because they don't overlook people. So they realize if you win this game, then you have a good chance to go wire to wire #1, and I think that's important to them. And I don't know if the coaching staff feels like that, but maybe if they're telling the truth, they really would like to be #1 too. Then on the other side of the coin, you've got Bryant, who had to hear it from a lot of people about losing to a 5A school. But let me just say, this is not your typical 5A school, and if you're holding that over those guys' heads, that's wrong. I mean, they're a very good team, Parkview, and I feel like a team that could get some votes in the national rankings, especially if they beat Bryant this week. I mean, beating Melissa, Texas, you're on like a 27-game winning streak right now. 7 or so Division I players at least. I mean, that's hard to beat. You know, you can play all around this region and win a lot of games. So it just sets up to be really big. I think both these teams feel like this is almost like a state championship game, even though it's non-conference, because there's a lot to prove on both sides. When you break the game down, I watched the film of the Maumelle game, and you know, Bryant has Quad Sanders as their head coach, who is a defensive coordinator by trade. His defensive coordinator is Tyrell Johnson, who was a great high school player, played Arkansas State, played in the NFL, was a head coach at Episcopal. You've got those guys in a room watching that video. They're going to have something cooked up to try to contain these guys, and they're going to be able to watch that Maumelle film. And Maumelle did a good job. We talked off the air for 2.5 quarters of containing them. The problem is, and what Coach Sanders said on the radio the other day, is you got 3 or 4 guys that you can control them for 3 quarters, and then all of a sudden they'll run 80 yards, and then the floodgates kind of open. So you've got to know where Montario Elson is at all times, because he'll line up in the running back, he'll line up in the slot. Quentin Murphy, it's 3rd and 12, you think you've got him, and then he'll take off for a 19-yard gain on a busted play. So those 2 guys and the other defensive staff have been watching this tape all week in trying to come up with something. The thing that they've got on their side is you've got a front 7 that's nasty. And, a lot of people don't know this, but they've lost 3 or 4 guys on their defense for the year because of injuries, and they just plug guys in. I mean, they're still really good. I mean, that's a lot of programs. If they had that happen to them, they wouldn't be competitive. But they coached guys up. They got some transfers in there that have helped out, and so that's increased their depth. But that's what I'm watching right off the bat, is how that chess match between the Parkview offense and the Bryant defense, and then what does Bryant do offensively? They looked really good and really smooth against CBC. The first 3 quarters of the Salt Bowl, they were trying to run the ball, and it was not effective, and then they started passing it and scored 3 touchdowns quickly. Against CBC, they attacked, went through the air. Yeah, I think Carter Ratliff's a real key in this game. He's 6'4". They got him the ball more. last week, and he's a real matchup problem. I mean, you can be fast, but if you can't, if you can throw the ball up over there, you can be really quick, but you may not be able to get up there. So it's kind of an advantage for him. And then the other thing, and I'll finish with this. I've gone on. This is a big game, so I get a little bit of time.
It's the biggest.
Yeah. So the last thing I will say is I think special teams will be really big in this game. It was big last year. You had a kick return right before the half. That was a big momentum booster. I think Omarion Robinson returned it. And then a muffed snap for Bryant, on a PAT. So both these teams, Bryant's going to suit 4 kickers for this game. They've got 2 guys that will do most of the chores and share them. And then, Parkview made 3 field goals. So it would not surprise me at all if this game came down to one of those guys kicking a field goal late in the ball game. That would not surprise me at all, because I think it's going to be a real struggle for both these teams to score, and it's back and forth, and I could just see somebody having to go on a long drive and get to about the 30 or 25 and have to kick one at the end.
The biggest of games coming down to the smallest
I could
of
see
margins.
it. I definitely could see it.
No matter what, it's going to be a great one. Highlights from all those games and more. Believe it or not, there's more all coming your way on the Friday Night Blitz.